Hi everyone. In this video, we would be learning the interface segregation principle, and we will also see the difference between the Liskov substitution principle and interface segregation principle. So let's start with the definition of interface segregation principle. The definition is very straightforward. It says that a class should not be forced to implement methods it does not use. Okay, let's understand this with the help of one example. So let's say we have this interface called as a restaurant worker, and it has some functions like cook, serve, and wash dishes, right? And these are some workers which are working in the restaurant, like dishwasher, waiter, chef. So we know that chef is only responsible to cook the food, right? He's not responsible for serving and washing the dishes, right? So for this function, serve and wash dishes, it will throw the exception. Similarly, waiter is responsible for serving. It is not responsible for cooking and washing the dishes, right? So in both of this function, again, it will throw the exception. So point to note over here is these classes are forced to implement the functions that they don't want. Like chef does not want serve and wash dishes, then also it is forced to implement these two functions, and it is clearly the violation of interface segregation principle. Okay, check the definition. A class should not be forced to implement the methods it does not use, and here we can clearly see that all these classes are forced to implement the functions which they don't want. So how to overcome this? The simplest way is we segregate this particular interface, right? So let's see the segregated version. Yeah. So the bigger interface is now segregated into smaller interface. Like this dishwasher duties, this is one interface and it will have all the functions related to duties of dishwasher. Similarly, waiter duties is another interface which will have all the functions related to duties of waiter, and so on and so forth. Okay. Now all these classes has to just implement the functions which it needs. Like waiter just needed the serve function, right? So it will just implement serve. It will not implement cook and wash dishes, right? I hope you got this point. So we have successfully eliminated the this part, which was classes were forced to implement the methods which they were not wanting. Okay. And we were able to do so because we have segregated the larger interface into smaller ones. Okay. So this was all about interface segregation principle. But see, many people get confused between Liskov substitution principle and interface segregation principle. So let me explain the difference as well. Yeah. So see, I hope you have seen the previous video on Liskov substitution principle. So there I showed you this particular example for the violation of Liskov substitution principle, right? So we were having this document and this were the children of this document class. And the text document was throwing the exception like this. Why? Because it was not supporting the print function. So in other words, people can argue that text document is forced to implement the print function, right? And in the ISP as well, the children are forced to implement the functions which parent has. This can be the argument, or right? So the clear cut answer for this is I've written over here. See, in LSP, child has to follow the contract of the parent. So example, the contract of the parent was child should print the document on the paper. Okay, child should print the document on paper. But if the child is throwing the exception instead of printing, or if the child is logging instead of actually printing the paper, printing the document on the paper, then that is violation. Like for example, parent is saying that print the document on the paper. Now child is just saying that system.out.println, the operation is not supported. That is not printing. That is something else. Okay. So child has modified the behavior. So that was LSP, like violation of LSP. In ISP, we are segregating the interface. But even after segregating the interface, the classes should still follow the LSP. See, let me show you this. So here we have segregated the interfaces, right? So now we have three interfaces, and all the classes will only implement those interfaces that it supports. So let's say waiter only implements waiter duties. Now, even after implementing the functions in the waiter duties like serve, it should still follow the LSP. Now, LSP said that the function, this particular function, should not throw exception, or it should not change the behavior. So like instead of like, what is this serve? Serve means you have the waiter should serve, right? But instead of serving, it is just logging. Then that is not following LSP. I hope you are getting this point. Let me just repeat one more time. See, after achieving the ISP, that is Interface Segregation Principle, after achieving that, the functions which are present in the classes like cook, serve, or wash dishes should still follow LSP. LSP says that this function should not throw exception. Okay, this is first point. And the second point is it should not change the contract. The parent has created the serve function so that child should serve the food. But if instead of serving the food, if it is just saying that console.out, or I mean system.out.println serving the food, that is logging, that is not serving the food. Okay. So I hope you got the subtle difference between LSP and ISP. And if you did, please like the video and subscribe to the channel.